to the HeartStream Musings podcast, a podcast to help you on your journey of self-love. I'm your host, Lisa Mae Francisco, a self-love coach and inner child guide. In the podcast, we'll dive deep on how to heal your inner child wounds, break your relationship patterns, and liberate your truth so you can claim the relationships in life that you deserve. Thanks so much for listening. I'm super excited that you're here. Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 3. I wonder when I'm going to stop saying which episode I'm on. I don't know. It's still new for me, so I still like saying it. But the last episode was educational content on what inner child work is, its origins, etc. And this time I'm actually going to talk about, or just get into the specificity of my own personal story with inner child work and how it landed into my life and showed up at a time when I truly needed it most. And if you've been following me on social media, Instagram, or subscribed to my newsletter, I actually sprinkle this story and, just bits and pieces of my content that's out publicly. And so for today's episode, I'm going to share the full story here. And I'm going to talk about the experiences in my life that led me to inner child work, the synchronicities that were laid on my path to get there, what happened when I found my teacher/guide, what inner child work looks like for me, and the healing process and how it has transformed the relationship with myself and the way that I relate to others. So this episode is going to be juicy and I'm so excited. So let's go. Let's just get into it. So I would say my inner child journey really took off in summer of 2017. I was living in New York, and during that year, I was applying to business school. That was literally my goal for a couple of years. I was studying for the GMAT/GRE. I was applying, essays, recommendation letters, rinse and repeat, all of that stuff. And I definitely want to share my whole career journey with you and my relationship with reframing what success looks like to me personally, but that's for another episode. But, in 2017, I was just really focused on where I was going to school. And I was only applying to full-time programs and actually got waitlisted to my number one choice and had to take the GRE again. And I'm sorry, it was a 2-year process of studying and applying. And so I just said, fuck that. I'm not taking it again. I just could not. And, I spoke to the admissions office for one of the schools that I wanted to attend. And they said that in order to attend their school, instead of doing full time, I would just have to be in the part-time program. And so the school was in the Bay Area, which is where I'm from. And I said, okay, I guess I'm just going to go to school there instead. I'm not staying in New York. I'm not going to LA. I'm moving back to the Bay Area. And that wasn't something that was ideal for me just because I'm from the Bay Area. I can go back there anytime. And I wanted just a new experience, a different place to live. And so I just remember calling my dad and telling him that I wanted to move back home for my MBA. And I just didn't want to take out any student loans. I didn't want to spend the rest of my life paying for school. And so I just saw this as, instead of, taking out student loans and paying, rent on an apartment while going to school, I could just live with my parents and use that money for my tuition. And when I called him, he was just so happy. He said, move back home, live with me and your mom, and you could also find a job here while you go to school part-time. And so in retrospect, that was probably the best situation financially, right? Being able to move back home, live with my parents, not have to take out student loans, being able to get a full-time job for my part-time program, and use that job to pay for my tuition. And so you know, I made that decision to move. But from there, I literally had only a month to say goodbye to my life in New York, where I had been living for, a decade. And at that point, I was ready to go energetically since I was looking at schools outside of New York. But it's just always hard saying goodbye to a chapter of your life that has really become your identity. And it's a place where I just spent, my formidable years there, and it made me who I was. And so anytime that I doubt myself, I call on that person who made it there with nothing. And to me, that's just implicit of my grit and tenacity. And obviously, I'm going to share that story in another episode. But anyways, I feel like I'm going to say that a lot in all of my podcast episodes. I'm going to save that for another episode. I'm going to save that for another episode. Anyways, okay. I also want to talk about the mindset that I had during this time. And I had been doing a lot of fucking deep inner work on myself, reflecting, looking at my interpersonal relationships, my relationship to myself, and the healing from other trauma I experienced, especially in the ending of the relationship with my ex. And so that was just really focused and honed in on, you know, the romantic shadows that I had. And so, in doing all this work, I just kind of ignorantly assumed other people did this work too, or that if they were parallel to me, in particular my parents, that if I was doing it, then I don't know, they're also doing it too. And so, as I was having my spiritual awakening, I'm going to say 2010, um, that they were on their own spiritual awakening since then. And so thinking that they had 7 years under their belt. um, anyway, so I leave New York. I move across country to California with this mindset, with this naivety. And we all had our reservations, my parents and I. I was a grown woman who I moved out of my parents' house at 18 to go to undergrad and then moved back at 31 for my MBA. It was like we were all grown ups living together in this home. And I had been living with roommates at the time. So, you're equal to them. They're not your parents. They don't ask you what you doing, where you been, where you going, da da da. Like, I just thought that somehow my parents were my roommates or would be my roommates. But the truth is, as much as you individuate from your parents, you'll always be their baby. Always, always, always. And so after the honeymoon period of me being back home and, being and everyone's just so excited because I'd only been going home for, the holidays. That was it. And so, we eventually settled into our routines. And that's when little things would come up. And I started to get triggered a lot from being in their presence. It's like, visiting your parents for the holidays. A lot of people talk about energetic boundaries, taking care of yourself before and after you visit them. But just imagine visiting your parents for a holiday that lasted 3 years. I mean, sometimes it's more for other people, but for me, it was a 3-year holiday. So I got triggered a lot. And I'm the type of person that has an insatiable curiosity for external knowledge, internal knowledge, just all of it. And that OG question of, why am I the way I am was being answered through these experiences. And the journey for me was definitely hard, but the greatest gift was that I got to understand how my coping mechanisms developed, the attributes that were formed that I cultivated, or I guess were nurtured, that kept me safe, that I nurtured within myself to keep me safe. And so it was almost as if I was being given keys to my own personal kingdom because I got to know myself on a deeper level. I had blocked a lot of childhood memories, and being a grown woman, I just had the knowledge to know that I could withstand any feeling as an adult. When you're a child, or when I was a child, I just often felt that my feelings were just too big for my body. But, doing work to understand how to regulate my nervous system or understand my emotions and where it comes from allowed me to use those tools in this setting where I had more knowledge, more consciousness. And so knowing that any feeling I felt at that time, even if it was uncomfortable, was met with compassion and love from myself, and that I could be a safe container. And so all those years in New York were actually preparing me for this biggest journey and the journey of coming home, literally and figuratively, to my parents and to myself. And that's actually part of my heroine's journey, going back to my roots as a changed person, and what does that mean for my old relationships, and is there room for everyone's evolution so we can have this new dynamic that allows all of us to show up as the newer version of ourselves, new dynamics, new paradigms. That's the ultimate test for a growth in relationship. And that's why, some relationships fall apart. And so, throughout this process and experience, I got answers to understanding why I feel overly responsible for things I can't control. Um, why I need to be perfect, why I can be so self critical at times, why I had thought less of myself, and why I was really scared of authority figures, or why my safe space for me is just going inwards, and understanding why I can be reactive in chaos, or why I could not express myself fully and wholeheartedly and feel like I could do that, and why I didn't trust myself, why I suppressed my emotions, and why I was so ambitious and accomplishment driven. To me, it was the currency for love. And so I learned a ton of lessons that would literally just, it cut right to my heart and felt like gut punches at the same time. But then also it felt as if it was an opportunity to know myself on a deeper level. And I wouldn't have known these things about myself had I not gone to my button factory, the places where the buttons were created. And, I can talk about it now with so much reverence, but at that time I was miserable. I mean, imagine being triggered all the time. Honestly, I was triggered all the time. That's how I ended up with health issues. Like my fight flight responses were kind of stuck. And I didn't know how to seek acupuncture to help with regulation. And, that helped a ton. But, I would talk to my friends about what I was going through, telling them I had adrenal fatigue and, the emotional stuff. And they suggested inner child work. And so I remained open. I didn't feel like any of the tools I had learned up to that point could help me, right? The meditation was there, the journaling was there, but I just didn't understand what inner child work looked like. I didn't know the exact tools to use. And it's interesting because a lot of people, when they'll take calls with me, they'll say, well, I understand you do inner child work, but like, what does that mean? I just want to be happy, playful, and free and joyous, which a part of it is, but a lot of it is learning to go back to those parts of yourself that was repressed. So, I remained open. I was still in talk therapy, but there's only, in my opinion, so much one can do just talking about things. Like for me, I needed more. And I'm not suggesting you ditch your therapist. I was in therapy while doing inner child work simultaneously, and I'm still in talk therapy. I just think for me, what really kind of was a great compliment to it was the inner child work, which propelled me in my healing of those generational relationship patterns and creating more self love in my life, like literally nurturing the baby me that was inside that never was nurtured as a little kid. And so, I started really trying to search for a guide to do this work. And in 2018, I ended up finding someone. And I consider it the time that I became a mom because I had to be. I was a mom to myself, my younger self, the little me. And I was very nervous to start this journey to know what it would look like because I just had no fucking clue. But, most importantly to me, I just wanted liberation. I wanted to be free of those things that were holding me back from my truest self, from my highest self. And that's when I learned to, yet again, surrender and trust. I feel like those are the two perennial lessons that one will always experience on this spiritual journey of like learning to surrender, trust the process, and be receptive to what the divine has in store for you, and just setting your ego continually aside all the time, turning it over, turning it over. And so with this guide, I had to trust in another person and be in this gracious container of working together, admitting that I was willing to relinquish all of my egoic thinking, sharing vulnerability and being intimate in a way I never had with other people before. At this level, talking, like really talking about my childhood. It's so easy to talk about the things that are current, but when you go back, there's just like a sense of shame or just loyalty to the family, right? Um, and just really showing her my underbelly. So the deepest thoughts in my closet, not being judged, but the beauty was that it resonated with her too, because she had similar experiences. And that was just, why I truly believe that healing and community with others is so powerful. I shared something and she said, yeah, that happened to me too, or I feel that way too. And so seeing this woman being able to just stand strong and have these experiences, but also move through it and alchemize it and see that she was just standing in her worth and her glory. I just thought, okay, I want that. I totally want that. And it helps. It really helped rebuild that core wound of not feeling like I belonged, that I could be a part of something. And, I worked with her intensely for 2 years. It was hermit mode for me, but it was also the most magical time of communion and intimacy with myself and with another person on things I had never even explored before. And to do it in such a loving container was the most healing I've ever experienced. And she's still in my life today. And I'm so, so, so eternally grateful for her. And what I loved about her the most was that she didn't make herself appear as some fucking guru as if she knew better than me. That it wasn't the student teacher dynamic that would carry out, the old projections of parent and child. She treated me like her equal. And I fucking love that. She was just merely showing me the way of what worked for her. And I wanted to explore that. And so, since that time in 2018, I've been on this healing journey of tending to little Lisa, just really being there for her, creating a safe space, acknowledging little Lisa when she's sad, when she's angry, upset, or triggered. And so by going back to meet the little me, I just started to unravel those generational relationship patterns that were encoded, those patterns that were encoded and tethered by these coping mechanisms I talked about earlier that kept me safe. And, I want to say that it doesn't matter what age you are to start this work, you can rewrite your experiences and change your future anytime you want. So, the biggest transformation from doing all this work, it just wasn't something that I just intentionally wanted to work on to make myself not triggered when I was around my parents or just feel better. But I unintentionally worked on the mindset I had around having children. So for the longest time, I was worried about having children. I wasn't worried. I think I was just indecisive about it. And I was totally on the periphery of being a mom because, to be honest, I just felt like I didn't trust myself to find a loving partner. I thought I would create the same environment I had when I was little because I was only attracting unavailable people. I just thought that was hot. I'm like laughing at it because it's funny to me in my experience. And I just thought, the more they don't like me, the more it means that if I get them to like me, then I am so lovable. Um, I want to earn their love, their trust, respect. Like love is just earned. I didn't know that you were born as this innate being that exuded love and that you can just be loved for who you were. You didn't have to earn it. And so, I was attracting all these unavailable people. So, I would go on these moratoriums to just be by myself, sometimes a couple of months to a year. And it was my version of, quote unquote, everyone says now conscious celibacy. But it was just rooted in fear. It wasn't rooted in any self-love at all. And it was just my own way of recalibrating and my own way of avoidance. So I would date a ton, then I would not. And so it was just like this yo-yo cycling around dating. But, through inner child work, I healed that part of me that didn't believe I could call in a partner that would be so loving, kind, and gentle. And I remember even having a reading done where the woman, she's pulling cards, and, she just asked me straight out, like, do you trust yourself that you can find someone? And it was hard to have someone ask me that because, like, I even feel a tightness in my stomach now, just sharing it. But I felt no. And I felt ashamed about it, right? Like there's just some inherent shame of, oh my God, I don't trust myself because, oh, I'm this age, or how embarrassing. I don't think that I can find someone. Da, da, da. It was like, mirroring to me myself, my low self worth. And I just, I avoided dating. I just didn't want to date, didn't want to deal with it, didn't want to deal with like these unavailable people that I was attracting. And ultimately, I just didn't want to deal with myself and that whole thing. And so, eventually what happened is I attracted someone so loving. And I'm going to say it again. I'm going to share on another episode how I met my current partner. And, too, I just love sharing that story because I just love it. It's just so fucking magical. And when I share it, it gives so many people hope. And I will share it another time, I promise. But anyways, I want to dive into the areas that I looked at with my guide. And, working with her, I got to look at my shame, the fears and actions that were self-sabotaging. I got intimate with my limiting beliefs and thoughts that created my actions and how I viewed the world through that lens. I understood that I felt unworthy and I didn't have a center of strength. And, it's definitely hard looking at this stuff. And, it's like it's shadow work, right? The parts of you that you think are icky and you don't want to look at, you don't want to admit to anybody. But there's so much liberation once you actually own those parts about yourself and you realize, oh, it's not that bad because everybody fucking feels those things too. Everybody. It's like, why don't we normalize those feelings rather than the fake feelings and showing off this persona of how perfect we are? Like, why don't we just do that? And so, I was looking at this hard stuff, but I just wanted to be loved unconditionally by other people. And I knew that in order for me to have that, I had to do it for myself first. And I always talk about a lot about this idea of self sourcing. So embodying this energy dissolves emotional contracts with other people and it gives people the freedom to show up in your life authentically to them. And so, that's the greatest gift we can give anyone, really, just allowing others to show up as their true selves, not of your own accord or agenda. And so, little by little, the love that I had for myself to show up as I was, icky parts or not, or just all of it, it just started to grow. And so I was able to understand and reach that place of what it meant for me personally of inner union. the different parts of myself, the younger parts of myself, the stuff that I didn't like, the stuff that I fucking loved, like everything. It was all me. And the idea of being loved unconditionally is being able to love all parts of me, whether it's someone else, whether it's myself. And so, this idea of inner union, which to me is just putting together all the seemingly incongruent parts of myself. And so when you infuse your healing with unconditional love, that's when those disparate parts start to meld together and you become whole. And you no longer want to hide those wounds, but share them, right? The wounds heal and they become scars, but the scars make you unique. And so, the actual process of healing was difficult. It was very difficult. It takes time to break your generational patterns. It's not a short-term solution, right? Um, you've doing it a while, so it's going to take a while to clear it out. And so I remember clearly one time when my family and I were having dinner for my dad's birthday, and at this point, and I was just in my grieving of it all, and I was angry. And my brother-in-law asked me why I was so angry. But the truth was, I was angry for the childhood that I never got or I felt that I wanted. And so the loneliness that I felt um, was very palpable. And, any time that I have anger, on the other side of it, it is sadness. It's easier to feel the anger because there's just more power in anger and it doesn't require vulnerability when you share your sadness, when you share that someone hurt you, that you had feelings, that they have the capability to hurt you. And so when I was in my anger, it was a fine line that sometimes led to victimization and blaming. And I got stuck in the blame game and became so fucking self righteous. I was like that for 2 years. And when I was self-righteous, I put myself on this pedestal that no one could reach to. And it was like me looking down at other people and scoffing at how they lived their life because I thought I was just like woke as fuck, and that's just not spiritual. I'm sorry, but it's not. I mean, spirituality to me is about believing that you're one with everyone else and just always continually giving that love and compassion to other people is extending it from your heart to theirs. And I didn't want to forgive. I wanted to hold on to my anger of having to be the bigger person all the time, resentful at the fact that I had to do the inner work and I wish that they had done it too. Why did I have to feel like I was the parent or just the bigger person? And ultimately, I was creating my own self imprisonment of suffering by gripping onto the past and making it my eternal reality. And I hear this a lot, do you want to be right? Do you want to be happy? And at the end of the day, what's important? And, this next statement is also super cliche, but people will often tell you your parents did the best they could with what they had. And honestly, those are facts, and today I've learned to forgive them in a non-linear way on my own timeline. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It just took a lot of time. And sometimes it's, I wanted a quick fix of being on the other side just to bypass pain and spiritual discomfort. But discomfort is just an indication for your experience of growth and that you're on the right path and you're not stagnant, and I've learned that healing just isn't linear as much as I love it to be, one and done. Okay, check box, knock that out of the way. Okay, next. There's just so many layers and nuances and deeper perspectives that get shown to you when you're ready. It's like peeling another layer of the fucking onion that never fucking ends. And so, right now for me, I feel very fortunate to have these two beautiful nephews that I get to see my parents play with today and see them just be so loving, and it's just so beautiful. And so it's interesting because it's through my nephew's childhood experiences that I get to vicariously have a different experience too. So their experiences are healing my experiences, and to see my parents in a different way and know, like, okay, maybe I didn't know the full story. And as you get older, you start to understand that people are very complex. There are stressors of work. And there's also the fact that people cannot transmit something that they do not have. So if someone also didn't grow up in a loving environment, then why do you think that they'll be able to share that with you? You know? Um, and therapy just wasn't something that was common in my parents' culture, their background, their Filipino culture, talking about feelings. And, I look at the relationship my parents had with their parents, my grandparents had with their parents. And so it is just this pattern that just keeps being passed down from generation to generation. And so the beauty and privilege that I have today is just the fact that we live in a world where people are very open to spirituality, open to doing this work, and I get to choose today to change. Whereas other people, it's like what they say, you don't know what you don't know. And so I feel very, very fortunate that I had the circumstances to pursue these things that might seem trivial to other people, but ultimately have changed my life so much. This just level of time and investment on really understanding how to break these patterns and understand myself too. And, another truth to this experience of just looking and healing and changing my perspective on my parents is that because I spent so much time on myself loving little Lisa, that compassion just radiated and extended to others, specifically my parents. And so, you see your relationship to others is just merely a mirror to the relationship you have yourself. So the more you love yourself, the more you can love others. And the more you can accept yourself, the more you can accept others. And the more you can forgive yourself, the more easily you can forgive another. And so creating a self love practice isn't selfish because it's literally healing others in tandem. Anybody who you interact with will experience energetically the joy and the love that you are embodying from within your core. They will. And just being around your presence will change their life. And, I also want to go back to that part of me that didn't want children, that mindset that was kind of changed indirectly, of believing that I wasn't sure if I wanted children because I didn't trust I could find a partner who met my ideals and, that I could recreate a different future. So slowly, by being there for myself consistently and listening to my inner child instead of, trying to shush her, right? So she just started to trust me. I started to build that relationship with her where she could bring all parts of herself and I would love her unconditionally. And I became like her ride or die partner. And I did a lot of visual meditations to connect with her. I did stuff that she really loved, like arts and crafts. Every time I would go to daycare after school, you would have to always pick an activity that you wanted to do. You could either play outside, you do homework, you do arts and crafts, and I forget what the other stuff was, but I always chose arts and crafts. It's my favorite thing in the world. It's funny how I was just like always an artist as a kid. But anyways, so she and I, my inner child, we moved into our own place in 2020. So 3 months into the pandemic, we co-created house rules for each other. And I mean, let's be real. I haven't met anybody who has created house rules with their parents. It's just always dictated top down. And if you did that with your parents, you are pretty lucky. And I created these rules with her, and I'm going to share it in another episode because otherwise it would just like this episode would be too long. But you know, to me, those are just some of the ways that I just became a really good parent to myself. And that's what it's like to engage and have an inner child practice. It's just an act of continuously practicing self love, acceptance, and compassion for all parts of you and the way you show up, not like the way you should show up, right? The shoulds are shit. um, And so today I don't have any doubts about having children or thinking, oh my God, will I fuck it up? It's because I've mothered myself so fucking good. And my inner child feels so safe, secured, and loved and taken care of that I know I'll be a great mom, just as I know my own fucking name. That statement is so powerful. And that certainty wasn't possible without inner child work. And that's the healing I have today because I'm so attuned to me. I know where things come from. I know which part of me is coming up when I'm triggered. Ask anybody that knows me, my penchant for self improvement and understanding deeper parts of myself. It's just a way of life that I embody. It's just not even about like, oh, I'm triggered today or oh, I feel this. It's like, no, it's just woven into the fabric of my existence and how I live my life. And it's not for show to consider myself, I don't know, a conscious teacher or mentor or guide. It's just something that I'm really passionate about, this perennial journey of just unlearning and learning and aligning myself more and more to my true self and to divinity. That is just what I believe anybody's purpose and mission is on this life, no matter what your vocation is. And, why I'm so passionate about sharing this transformation and showing you that your past doesn't have to define your life and future, that you can absolutely change it. And if there's still doubt about creating a different future for you, then just know that I'm holding that vision for you because I believe it, even when you don't. And just know that when you're ready, you can step into that vision and believe anytime. It's always there for you when you're ready. When the unknown becomes a better option than the known way of living in pain and fear. That's when you're ready to step into it. And that's when you're on the precipice of any transformation, right? And so I'll end it right there. But thank you so much for tuning in and listening. That was a lot of fun. I felt like I could talk for more, but I just hope that this episode serves you. I know it served me, and it was such a joy to share this part of my journey with you. And I'm sure you can tell why. You can probably feel the energy that I'm emitting from just talking about this, of why I believe in it so much. And so, if you want to work with me one-on-one, you can check out my website, lisamaycoaching.com. I have a page on my offerings. I have 3-month, 6-month offerings to work with me. And the best way to stay connected is to subscribe to my email newsletter where I share weekly self-love tips, tools, offerings on how to work with me. So thank you again for listening. But before I sign off, here's my question for you today. So what are you doing to fill your self-love cup and connect to the little you? All right, bye everyone, and I will catch you next time.